Baptist. Arise from the dead.
Read the Bible, you'll find out that God's not too happy with what's going on around us.
Redeem the time, because the days are evil.
The Bible has not changed.
Boldly proclaim the restoration and preservation of Christian values in America.
Satan has brainwashed a whole nation.
As goes the church, so goes the nation.
Nobody's convicted of anything anymore.
And now, here's Last Call with your host, B.J. Edwards.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Yeah, thank you, thank you. Hey, it's said that hard times create strong men. Strong men create good times create weak men create hard times. We kind of seen the cycle here, haven't we? Speaking of hard times, man, the tragedy yesterday in Philadelphia, it's just hard to imagine, or in Washington, D.C., the plane accident. It's just hard to imagine. You know, first of all, 2 plane crashes in 1 week, and one in Philly, one in Washington, D.C. Children, parents, moms, dads, brothers, and sisters. That's really hard to think of, folks.
Families disrupted like crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder how that affects air travel plans.
Yeah. Well, we pray for all the friends, family, and associates of those who are no longer with us here on planet Earth. Amazing times. And the old expression, the dog ate my homework. Well, no, I can't use that, but the power went out when I'm preparing for the program this morning. So I'm gonna muddle through this. By the way, for our YouTube producers, you're about to listen to 2 hours of opinion and entertainment supplied by Last Call. What's going on there? We're not doctors, lawyers, politicians, professional journalists, nor do either of us hold a doctorate degree in anything. Not that that would make any difference, our opinion, of course. We only ask that you as an individual or corporately not take our statements or those that we voice from others personal, nor do we recommend that you act on them as if they are facts, although they might very well be just that, facts, but that's our opinion. You're not required to listen to, act on, or repeat anything you hear today, and that any information or opinion we present is meant for the good of the order and by no means intended to harm or threaten anyone. Am I coming through okay with you, Mr. Anderson? I sound kind of quiet over here.
You're fine. You're fine.
Okay. I am. We are blessed this morning to have an incredible guest, former Lieutenant Colonel Brad Miller, and we're going to bring him on in about 10 minutes. He was a battalion commander in the U.S. Army who refused to take the COVID shot and refused to order his soldiers to take the shot as well. I loving that. As a result, he was relieved of his command and resigned soon after. So what does this West Point graduate think should happen now regards President Trump's new executive order regarding those that were harmed vocationally, mentally, and physically as a direct result of a yet-to-be substantiated COVID scare? What do you think should be done, folks? Going to have a good discussion this morning, and it needs to be had. If you put that out and leave it for subjection, then you're gonna suffer from that subjection, folks. Oh man. Next week, by the way, we're going to be interviewing Pastor Bill Dunphy, a J6er, who stood on the west side Capitol on January 6th and preached righteousness. And he was thrown in prison because he was effective. He wasn't telling anybody to overthrow the government, but he was telling America to get their act together.
A voice in the wilderness.
Yeah, Bill's a good friend of mine. Man. By the way, I understand there are about 10 J6ers that are still in captivity. Pray for them and do some research with the help of, say, your senators and representatives. Call them and ask them, are all the J6ers out? You don't know?
Any
Does that mean you don't
Jerry
care?
Brown?
No, as far as I know, he's still in prison.
Mistreated in Kentucky.
Yep. Along with there's 10 others. They're not all in Kentucky. They're I think it's 4 other gulags around America. These are just very, very crazy times, folks. Very crazy times. Mr. Anderson, how you doing this morning?
Well, pretty well. I'm slowly waking up. I put in a lot of hours yesterday.
Yeah.
Something for last call. Something keeps me up at night.
Is that guy a slave driver?
At the last minute, yeah.
Well, look, I can only do it when God puts it on my heart.
I can understand that.
And it has to be.
I hope he starts thinking about my heart too.
Well, he is. He's keeping you in condition. He's keeping you in condition.
On my toes.
Yeah. What do we got here? You want to do some good news? You want to do the good news, and then we'll get to our guest.
You got good news?
Yeah, I got good news. You got a song to play for that, maybe?
I do.
Yeah.
It's always a challenge to find these things that I get them loaded up.
Well, while you're looking. Donald Trump has just done an incredible job. I mean, can you notice a difference between him and Joe Biden? I know it's hard to see. It's hard to see. Wow. Colombia president acquiesces to Trump's demand to allow deported immigrants back into the country. DEA raids hang out on vicious Venezuelan gangs in Colorado. CNN stunned at seeing Donald Trump's approval rating. Trump says he sent troops to turn the water on in California. It's fun to watch. It's ton of fun. Target looks to scale back DEI initiatives. I'm still working with Costco. I'm up to a VP level with them, and I want to talk to them about. Look, at DEI is discriminatory. When you talk about equity, and you talk about inclusion, you talk about discrimination. Who are the bad guys here? Yeah. It's the white male, and you get a star if you're a Christian. These are the bad guys. These are ones that are causing all this problems with these people. That makes me feel uncomfortable. Shouldn't it make you feel uncomfortable? It should.
Getting a target on your back.
Yeah. Ooh, good point. Trump signs executive order banning chemical mutilation of children. I tried to get a hold of our friend, Mr. Younger, and maybe get him back on the program. I don't know how that's going to affect his situation. Wow.
Interesting question.
He had twin sons in California, Jeff Younger. Well, they were born in Texas, and Texas wouldn't allow Mama to do what Mama wanted to do. So Mama moved to California, hiding the children from a father. I don't think he's seen them for a couple years now. Twin sons. And Mama is trying to make twin boy sons, make them complementary. One girl, one boy. And I'm hoping executive orders like this will stop this insanity. We're going to talk about an executive order in about 5 minutes. COVID. Yeah. Trump signs order shielding taxpayer dollars from funding abortions nationally, internationally. California drops prosecution against Sandra Merritt. Wow. There's just so much going on. Idaho House of Representatives, our friend of Mass Resistance, They passed a resolution urging the Supreme Court to overturn Obergefell gay marriage ruling. Do you see what's happening out here, folks? Do you see what's happening out here? This insanity that we've been going through for the past, especially the past 4 years. Where wrong is right, the bizarro world, where wrong is right and right is wrong. I don't know. Look, Donald Trump is not God. Okay, let's get that straight. He's not God. He's letting the sunshine in, okay, but he's not God. And what he is doing, and understand this, what he's doing at best is creating an environment where, let's say, Christian ideals and leaders and ideas can get traction in the marketplace of ideas. There is less resistance in doing the right thing. Now is the time for you to act. It is still we the people, folks. It's still we the people. I want to get our guest on here, Mr. Anderson. Let's take a quick break, and then we're going to bring Brad Miller on. And Brad, wow, you're going to be amazed, folks. You're going to be amazed. BJ Edwards along. BJ Edwards along, Mr. Anderson. This is your last call.
Last call with BJ Edwards. Real talk about real life.
A former lieutenant colonel, battalion commander in the U.S. Army, who refused to take the COVID shot. I can't believe that anyone like this actually exists. You need to understand the position this gentleman was in and the risk he was taking by doing what he did. And as a result, not only did he refuse to take it, he refused to order his troops to take it. Whoa. And as far as I understand, he's only one of two. I didn't know one existed, but I guess there's two that have done this. And he was relieved of his command. And then he left the Army. 19 years and a few months, short of 20 years retirement. Think about that. How many of you would do that? I know a lot of folks out there didn't want to lose their jobs, or they wanted to see their grandchild. And if you don't get the shot, you don't wear a mask. Well, there was hell to pay. Brad Miller, welcome to the last call, brother.
Well, good morning. Thanks for having me on. Happy to be here.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. I want to talk about the executive order that the president signed with regards to COVID and the service and what it says and the kind of openings that it leaves, which could be good openings and bad openings, if you will. But it's very general in terms, which can be a good thing and can be a bad thing. But at least it's out there and it's a tool that we can work with. Agreed?
Hopefully. I mean, I think that remains to be seen, because when we say it's a tool that we can that we can work with, I think the next step that's going to happen is there will be more information released by the Department of Defense and then the various service branches. And in fact, I just saw something that I believe just came out, and it's nothing more than a couple of paragraphs that the Marines have placed on their website, but all it basically says is, hey, more information will be forthcoming. But it does mention that in the wake of the release of the executive order, basically they're putting together their plan and they'll release more information. So I believe that those implementation plans from the Department of Defense and then from the various services are probably being put together now.
Okay. I see at least the hope that because this is so broad, we, the American public, yourself, myself, Mr. Anderson, and all the folks that Major Tom that went through this hell can start redefining or start at least define what this should mean. Does that make sense to you? We have an opportunity to do that.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean,
We don't know till we
depending on. So, and here's why I say that. Here's why I'm slightly pushing back a bit.
Okay.
So people like myself and others have been jumping up and with respect to the military. Many people have been screaming about what happened in society at large, but with respect to the military, individuals have been jumping up and down on their desks and writing articles and doing interviews and talking to congressmen.
Mm-hmm.
We're permitted to talk to congressmen for several years, and not with some exceptions have largely been ignored. And so now when this executive order was written, to my knowledge, and I could be wrong, but to my knowledge, the individuals themselves who were most affected by the COVID shot mandate were not consulted on the writing of the executive order. And I don't know that to my knowledge, they haven't been consulted on what DOD or the service branches are writing now in terms of their implementation plans. Now, of course, that could change, but I know that for years, people have been trying to get certain information or certain things that were not being addressed to be considered, things like that. So, I mean, I even have friends of mine. I wasn't necessarily part of this project personally, but I have friends of mine who even put together some draft language for an executive order to get it to the administration. With, as far as I know, no luck. And I don't know that anyone has reached out to them to ask for their input on DOD's actual plan either. So do I think that there are opportunities? Yes. Do I think that this is an uphill climb? Yes.
Yeah, I agree. So what before we ask you what you might suggest here is you're a West Point graduate. You've been in the service. You've been in war zones, right?
Yeah, I went to Afghanistan a couple times.
Okay. 19 years. Lieutenant Colonel, that's not bad with that amount of service to be in that and a battalion commander. I mean, you've kind of shot up the ranks, if you will. And that's pretty good stuff. That's pretty good stuff. What made you decide to not get the jab and then take that to the next step, protect your battalion from not getting the jab? What research did you do? Are you a doctor?
Nope.
Okay. So how is it that you decided not to take the jab?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I went to West Point. I graduated in 2003, and I would ultimately leave the Army in 2022. So a little over 19 years of active service. During that time, I deployed to Afghanistan. I also spent 3 years stationed in South Korea. I spent a year stationed in Honduras. Visited plenty of other places on shorter trips for a variety of reasons. So I did do quite a lot during the military. And in 2021, I took command of a battalion in the 101st Airborne Division. Some people who aren't even necessarily very familiar with the military may have heard of that division. It's a historically relevant division that has a long, storied legacy of things that they have accomplished over the decades. A lot of history going all the way back to World War II. A great division. So I took command of a battalion in that division in 2021. That was in June. The COVID shot mandate would go into effect about 2.5 months later in late August. I would be relieved of command in October for my refusal to comply with the mandate. But I will tell you that as early as 2020, and I was actually stationed in South Korea at the time that everyone started, worrying about whatever this COVID was or was not. In very, very early 2020, I was stationed in South Korea, and I was immediately very skeptical of everything that we were being told. Now, I'm I can't tell you that I had everything figured out. I didn't necessarily have much more information than anybody else had that was readily available in the media, because that's all really we had in those early days. But over the years, I had just become so skeptical of what we were being told by our government. And I mean, I've been going through this, doing my own research as to what I thought was going on and the way that the government truly operated, probably for over a decade at that time,
Okay.
which to be honest, kind of led me to a little bit of cognitive dissonance in the military, almost kind of this deliberate, this maybe not necessarily cognitive dissonance, but this deliberate partitioning in my own mind, to where I said, you know what, I often do not agree with what our government does or why it does things or the narratives that we're being told. I don't often, buy them, but I still believe that there are good people out there. I still believe that we need a military. I still believe that the military is fundamentally good. And I believe that the military needs good leaders. So that's how I kind of reconciled in my mind, having stayed in the military up to the point of 2020, 2021, when now we're dealing with COVID. But as things progressed from 2020 to 2021, I just became so much more skeptical of what we were being told. And then when they started talking about these new shots, they had to change the definition of vaccine to make it more expansive so that they could use that term to then apply to these injections. And I just felt like, you know what? Are they trying to just get us to take this shot? Is this all about just, taking the shot? And I think it was bigger than that, but I do think that one of the objectives was to get people to take these shots. But anyway, I just knew that you can't take the shot. Like this is part of something much larger. I now refer to the whole thing that happened during COVID. I typically refer to it as the COVID op, because I do believe that it was an op that was perpetrated against this country and the world. But I mean, my thoughts on it have become a lot more refined over the last 3 years. But even in mid to late 2021 and early 2022, I knew that this was something that I could not participate in. So is one of the reasons that I did not want to take the shot because of my own health? Yes, but that wasn't the most important reason. I have a lot of people who sometimes tell me, "Oh, you must be so glad you didn't take the shot because of your health." Well, yeah, that's true. That's certainly true. That's not even the main reason, though, that I did not take the shot, because that's a me-centered reason. The number one reason that I didn't take the shot was because I wasn't going to participate in this op. I 100% believed, and believe now even more clearly, that the COVID op was treason. And I thought the military was going along with it. Now, a lot of these generals were probably too naive to understand that they had been duped. They also were unaware that they were breaking the law. They shouldn't be unaware now. I mean, a lot of them could probably claim ignorance in 2021 when the mandate came out. I don't believe that they can still claim ignorance 3.5 years later. There have been so many questions and so many red flags. But I knew back then, I couldn't have told you exactly why. I probably could not have articulated it very clearly, just because much more information has come out since then. But even then, I knew if I go along with this, I am participating in the destruction of this country, and I will not do that. And so I refused the shot. And when I took command of my battalion, even though it was about 2.5 months before the mandate went into effect, the writing was on the wall. We knew the mandate was going to go into effect. I knew that I would eventually be fired from battalion command. I knew that. Battalion command should be a 2-year position. I held it for 4.5 months. On the day that I took command, I knew that there was no way that I would make it to the finish line 2 years later in command. I knew that. I knew that on the day that I took command, that I would be fired. And that turned out to be true. But I told my battalion, I'm not going to tell you to take the shot or not take the shot. That is a personal decision. And I know that a lot of pressure is going to come from above to pressure everyone to take the shot. And that's going to end with me. I'm not going to pressure anybody to take it. If you choose to take it, that's your decision. But I'm not going to tell you, I'm not going to tell you to take it. So I made that very clear when I first took command of the battalion. So anyway, that was a little bit of a long, winding answer to your question, but that's just kind of summing up a little bit where I was at that point in my career, and kind of some of the reasoning that was going on in my mind as to why I didn't want to take the shot, and then also why, regardless of what I was ordered to do from above, I made it clear when I took command that, hey, I don't care what they tell me to do. I'm not going to take the shot. You guys ultimately have to make your own decisions. But I guess, kind of what I wanted people in my battalion to see was if there was something, and I didn't say this to them, but I tried to communicate it with my actions, is you do not have to comply. You do not have to comply. Now, you may have to deal with the consequences of not complying, and I can't absolve you of those. I can't even absolve myself. I mean, I can't even save my own career, so I can't necessarily save yours, but I didn't say that in those words. I did say I wasn't going to, order anyone to take the shot, but with my actions, I tried to communicate, you do not have to comply. There may be consequences if you don't comply, but you do not have to comply. You can choose not to take this shot and not go down this road. You may lose your career. You may lose your retirement pension or whatever, but you do not have to take the shot. There are other options.
Who told you? How did this work from your standpoint? You're the commander. You report to a general, right?
Yeah, I was a lieutenant colonel. So my direct boss was a colonel. So
okay.
So a battalion is part of a brigade is part of a division. So my direct boss was a colonel. He was the brigade commander. The boss 2 levels up was a 2-star general who was the division commander. So he would be the commander of the entire 101st Airborne Division. Okay.
So the colonel came to you and said, you need to take the shot. Right?
Yeah, ultimately, but it was kind of first communicated just more, I would say, collectively. It was kind of the Army, there's a mandate across the board.
Yeah.
I had made it clear to my boss, the colonel, when I took command that I was not going to take the shot. So 1, I let him know that I had not taken the shot, and 2, I let him know that I would not take the shot. That was in June. In July, so mandate hasn't gone into effect yet. In July, it was so clear that the mandate was going to happen at any point that I went back to the colonel and I said to him, sir, just so you know, my thoughts on this have not changed. And he said to me, I hope it doesn't come to that. And what he meant was, I hope this doesn't actually become mandatory because I'd hate for you to lose your career. I mean, he was I don't have any special animosity against him. I mean, all things considered, he was an okay guy. I mean, he went along with this just as much as everyone else did. So I can't cut him any slack there, but I don't have any special animosity towards him. And all things considered, he was fairly respectful towards me. He never once tried to convince me to take the shot.
Interesting. We're going to take a break here shortly. When we come back, I want to get into specifics to what you think should happen with regards to service members, whether they left the job like you did. There's other things here too, folks. This there's a number mentioned, I think 8,700 or something like that. They want us to think about just this number, but it's more than that because there's service members that got the shot and suffered physically. There's mental stress involved with this as well. And we need to talk about that. And also those that left, like Brad, what do you do with those folks? No, they didn't get fired, but they had to leave. I mean, Major Tom Haviland had a situation. He wasn't in the service. He was a contractor, but was told as a contractor because he was working for a service organization that he would have to get the jab, but he didn't. Let's take a break, Mr. Anderson, come back, and let's get to specifics in terms of what needs to be done. B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson, your last call.
Keeping you informed. This is Last Call with B.J. Edwards.
And we are back with Brad Miller. Folks, by the way, panels, if you want to ask a question, just unmute yourself and we'll try to bring you in as quick as we can. What needs to be done in your mind with regards to those service members that were injured, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
as a result of not getting the jab, as a result of getting the jab, because there's two categories there, and both experienced bad news, if you will. What needs to be done? If you were, if the president of the United States knocked on your door and said, "Hey, I want you to fix this thing for me, Brad," what would you do?
3 things. So of all the things that need to be done, you can put them into 3 different categories: acknowledgement, accountability, restitution. So for acknowledgement, there are 2 things that need to be acknowledged. The COVID shot mandate was harmful, and most importantly, the COVID shot mandate was unlawful. Not just a bad idea, not just a strategic blunder, not just a hit on readiness. It was unlawful, unequivocally unlawful. That must be acknowledged. So 2 things must be acknowledged. It was harmful. It was unlawful. The next one, accountability. If it was unlawful, that means crimes were committed. People must be held accountable for those crimes. We believe, we're a nation of laws, rules-based order. We believe in justice. Same thing in the military. So, people must be held accountable. We don't want this to happen again. And then restitution. In as much as possible, and it's not going to be fully possible, but in as much as possible, we want to restore people to their good standing, where that can even be done. A lot of people are, I believe some service members are dead because they took the shots. Others are horribly injured, unfortunately. Careers were ruined. People lost their retirements, people lost other benefits, etc. And I would also say that there's a lot of moral injury that occurred. So moral injury is what happens when the easiest way to think of moral injury is that disconnect that occurs between your actions and your own stated moral code, or the moral code of an organization and then that organization's actions. So think about the guilt that you feel when you do something wrong. That is a type of moral injury. But now think about the jarring effect that happens when you witness somebody else do something wrong, or you're part of an organization that has a very well-established culture, ethos of virtues and values like the military purports to have, and then the leaders of that organization act in full violation of the culture that organization is supposed to have. So that impact that people feel, that's moral injury. People recognize it. They don't necessarily know the name, but that's what it is. It's moral injury. So, I'll go back. So acknowledgement, accountability, and restitution. Those are the 3 things that have to occur. And it has to take into account all those who were injured. So that could be people who were kicked out voluntarily. It can be people who chose to leave of their own accord because they saw what was happening. I would fall into that category. But it's also the people who were in the process of getting kicked out, and then their careers were saved because the mandate ended up being rescinded in January of 2023. But that doesn't mean that their careers remained unaffected. Many of them, their careers had already been marred because they had, they had been marked as somebody who had disobeyed this order, even if they didn't ultimately get kicked out. And then there are those who were coerced against their will into taking the shot. They took the shot. Some of them are injured, and others, maybe they haven't manifested some sort of injury, and we certainly hope that they do not, but they still were coerced, in many cases unlawfully, to take a shot against their will. They also were harmed, but those people are in the military still. So what's the remedy? So if you'd like, we can take a couple of minutes and we can kind of talk about what the executive order does address and where I agree with it, and then where I think there are some gaps.
Okay, I think Tom Haviland wants to have a word or two with you before you do that. Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, Brad, very eloquently stated. I think you've covered most, if not all, the bases there. Just wanting my hats off to you. Well done. My decision was easier than yours because I was already drawing retired major salary and was 61 at the time, only a year away from starting Social Security early. My wife is 10 years younger, so I could tell the Air Force to go pound sand. I was a defense contractor working at Wright-Patt Air Force Base. BJ gave you a little bit of hint as to what I did. I sent an email. I made my decision in October of 2021 as well. A 3-star Air Force general that sent an email out to the whole base telling everybody the dates they have to perform, military, federal government, civilian, and us defense contractors, which I was one, the dates we had to get the shot by or else get kicked out. And I sent him back an email, Brad, and I said, shame on you. instead of standing up for our right to decide for ourselves whether or not to take an experimental drug, you tried to guilt us into taking the jab. Shame on you. And I didn't just send that email to him. I CC'd all 30,000 people that work at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base.
I love it.
So I knew what was going to happen. I got a call
Yep.
a half hour
Yep.
later from my
Yep.
defense contractor boss. I was fired for my
Mhm.
$165,000 a year job for
Mhm.
shaming the 3-star Air Force general in front of the entire base.
Yeah, he deserved it. He deserved it.
He did, because as you said, he tried to make us, he gave us an unlawful order.
Yep.
An unlawful order
Yep.
to take an experimental drug.
Yep.
So God bless. But what you had to do was harder, because you had 19 years in. You're less than a year away from your retirement, and you're giving all that up, and potentially could even go to Leavenworth. You could be court-martialed and go to Leavenworth. So you took a lot bigger risk than even I took. So God bless you for doing that. I want to hear what you have to say in terms of restitution. So I'll get off the line here and listen to you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, Tom. Thank you. Yeah, and I don't have to tell this crowd this, but obviously there are more important things in life than money. I know this crowd knows that, but just to say that and put that out there, I truly feel like I left the military with my integrity intact and my oath to the Constitution unbroken. And so for me, I look back on my service and I'm happy. I'm maybe not fully happy, but I don't regret the decision that I made at all. I mean, I'm still frustrated about the way that things happened, but it is what it is. You're in a situation and you have to make the best decision. And I am happy with the decision that I made, and so now I feel a moral obligation to continue the fight. I took off the uniform because I felt that I could no longer continue service in this institution. I didn't feel like I could reconcile that continued service with the oath that I had taken to the Constitution. I was looking at all these senior leaders, and by the time that I actually decided to resign, and this was actually several months after I had been relieved of command, by that point, I knew 100% that this order was unlawful. And I'd already believed that it was, part of a much larger kind of treasonous op. And so I just said, you know what? Unfortunately, I'm very proud to be a West Point graduate. I'm proud to have served in the United States Army, but I am most proud of making the decision to take off the uniform when I no longer felt that I could serve and maintain my oath to the Constitution, as paradoxical as that may seem. So, but yeah, happy
Whoa! Hold on. What do you mean as paradoxical? Are you kidding? I mean, come on. We need more of that, Brad. We need more of that.
I'm with you, but I understand that for some people, they may find that curious to hear someone say, so you felt that you were serving your country more by taking the uniform off. And I would say, yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
That's ugly. That is ugly. That evil has no limits. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. But that's what I mean by that.
Okay. I think I'm going to bring Tom back on, and hang in there. I got him. And I'm going to bring Martin on because I think Martin has a question.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Wow.
Martin.
It is awesome meeting you, Brad. And I have had the privilege of knowing Tom Havlin for a number of years now. I would like to ask both of you, men, for the last call viewers, where did your strength to stand up against this kind of tyranny come from? And if I can start with you, Brad.
Thank you, great question. Yeah, great question. So, I mean, I certainly believe that if I can't speak for anybody else, but for me, believing that this was not just an affront to our country, but kind of an affront to mankind created in the image of God, then I believed that I would be, violating God's law too. And I wasn't going to do that. I mean, I believe that we're all going to have to be judged one day. And I just felt like, hey, I don't think I'm some hero or somebody that had a whatever. I'm not trying to put myself up as some paragon of virtue or whatever, but I do believe that I made the right decision in this case. And I do believe that my courage, first and foremost, comes from just a desire to place things in their right prioritization. And for me, I do prioritize God first, first and foremost.
Amen. Well said, Brad. In my case, very similar to Brad. I grew up, believe in all those stories about the pioneers going west and, loving America and loving individual freedom. The fact this country was built on individual freedom, not on communism, not on the collective, but on the rights of the individual. And I felt that very much in my core when that mandate came out. I said, this is wrong. This is just, like you said, not only from a health perspective, and I was looking at data that was showing hundreds of thousands of breakthrough cases of COVID by the early fall of 2021. That was coming out of the UK Health Security Agency in the UK. Our own CDC was covering up the information, but UK was putting out good information. So I knew that it was wrong technically from a data standpoint, but more so than that, like Brad is, it became an issue of freedom versus tyranny. And I just said, this is not what America's about. America's about freedom, not about tyranny. So, and that led me then to, because I was fired from my job and retired early, I then went ahead and did 3 worldwide embalmer blood clot surveys to track one of these most horrific issues with the COVID vaccines. And I've got a sample here of a white fibrous clot that was removed from a vaccinated person. Yeah. This came out of the abdomen region. So, Brad, not only did you make a fantastic decision morally and ethically, which was your first choice, but also you made a very wise decision medically for your own health, because this could happen to anybody.
Sure.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks.
All right. We interrupted you. I forget where we were.
No, it was great. So that was great. And I let me say something real quick now that Tom mentioned it, because he reminded me of something. So if whoever wants to destroy the cultural fabric of this country, if they have a comprehensive strategy to do so, one of the cultural pillars they have to knock out is the military. Why? Well, of course, there's the military prowess and might that we have. That's true. But let's go one step further. But what else does the military represent? So those American ideals, that rugged individualism that Tom just referenced, that has always resided so strongly in our military. Our military has been this cultural pillar of strength and American ideals, that bastion of conservative American traditions and ideals. So it's not just guns, tanks, bombs, and explosions that the military has, but it's also that cultural strength. So if you want to put together a comprehensive strategy to try and destroy the culture of the United States, you have to knock out the cultural pillar that the military represents.
I would like to see, you're going to get me off on the family, and then you're not going to be anywhere. Okay. Because I'm telling you what, the family is so key. See, you can't get me started on that. So where are we at right now? What do we need to do? What are the next steps in your mind?
Yeah. So there are, in the executive order, there's some language that I do appreciate in the way in which the executive order characterizes the mandate. And there are a couple of descriptors that I think are good. I just don't think they're quite adequate. So, for example, the executive order refers to the mandate as being unfair, overbroad, and an unnecessary burden on service members. I agree with that. It also refers to the dismissals of service members as being wrongful. I agree with all that language. I appreciate that characterization. But in that first paragraph of the executive order, there is a key word that is missing, and it is a monumental omission, in my opinion. And that word is unlawful, because it's important that we understand the COVID shot mandate was not just a bad idea. It was not just a strategic blunder, whatever. It was all those things, but it was unequivocally unlawful, and that must be acknowledged. So that, I think, is a gap. Now, what else? Here's something that I do like about the executive order. The executive order mentions those that were involuntarily discharged. You mentioned a couple minutes ago this number 8,400, 8,500 that we keep hearing about in the media. That is the number of people who were separated from the service involuntarily. That number does not include individuals who retired early, individuals like me who resigned, individuals who left when their contract was up, but the reason they left was the COVID shot mandate. So that number is closer to 100,000, 80 to 100,000. So it's 10 or more times the size of that other group. So, and here's why that's important. Just if we look at the greater context, if you take into account our active duty and reserve troops, we have over 2 million troops. So 8,400 is a drop in the bucket. 100,000, even when compared against 2 million, though, that is a significant hit. So when you realize that we may have lost as many as 100,000 troops because of the COVID shot mandate, between those that involuntarily were separated and those that voluntarily left the service, because of the COVID shot mandate, you realize that it's much more significant than just those that were kicked out. So what I like about the executive order is it does draw attention to those who voluntarily left. The problem that I have with that is the language with regard to reinstatement and back pay in the executive order explicitly refers to those who were involuntarily separated. The language is much more ambiguous when it comes to whether or not the back pay would also apply to those who voluntarily left. So if back pay is not offered to those who voluntarily left, then I think one of the results that you're going to see is not many of those individuals are going to go back. Sure, it'd be great that they would go back and, go back to their former rank, etc. But many of them are not going to feel that that is appropriate compensation. And so the reason that I share this is because I run in a lot of circles every single day with people who left the military because of the COVID shot mandate and have been fighting against it for the last couple of years. I'm in communication with them daily. I see what they post on social media. I see what they send me in messages or what they tell me. And right now, the opinions on the executive order range from kind of disappointed, those who, okay, I like this, but I don't like this. This is missing. So kind of disappointment to being insulted at what the executive order has left out and the things that are just not covered there. And there are a lot of people that are very angry with the executive order. Now, what I will say though is an executive order by its very nature does not necessarily have to be overly prescriptive. It just should give some general instructions, from the president to, in this case, the executive department, which is the Department of Defense that's going to carry out this specific executive order. We would expect a much more robust and detailed plan to come from the Department of Defense and the service branches. But as of right now, most people, my opinion, based on what I have seen, what people have told me, what I've heard them say, they are not happy with the executive order. They do not believe that it goes nearly far enough.
Well, it's easier to do the financial math on 8,400 versus 100,000. You know what I mean?
Correct. That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Pete Hagsteth, you're listening to Last Call with BJ Edwards and Mr. Anderson. That's our break, Mr. Anderson. Pete Hagsteth.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you see him in all this?
Well, I mean, ultimately, he will, as the Secretary of Defense, he will own this plan to put into action and carry out the instructions that he has received with the executive order. So, I mean, he's the one who reads that and says, okay, how are we going to comply with this executive order?
Okay. I think Norm Davis, one of our panelists, has a comment or a question or two. Thanks, Norm, from Kentucky.
Kentucky. Now, thank you, Brad. God bless you. It was great to hear your willingness or your heart to put God first. Now, were you in Fort Campbell?
Yes. Yes.
Well, yeah, I'm about 30 air miles from Fort Campbell. The helicopters come over my house all the time. So, yeah, I'm familiar with Fort Campbell.
Oh, yeah.
I try to look at things from a spiritual point of view. I try to see the spiritual side. And I believe that God wants the same thing for America that he wanted for his chosen people, Israel. And that is a military second to none. And I've studied the book of Deuteronomy a lot, and there we see the formation of government. And then we see God addressing the military, the education, the economics, physical policy for government, justice system. But the first thing that I see that was covered was the military. And I thought, why would God talk about the military even before the family? And it came to me, if you don't have a strong military, you're not going to have a country very long. So the military is very important. And there's an interesting verse in Deuteronomy 2:25. God made this statement. He said, "This day I'll begin to put the dread and fear of you on the peoples under the whole heaven, so that at the report of you they will tremble and be in anguish over you." And that is a military second to none. And that's the peace through strength. So this whole thing is a major attack from the enemy. And just look at the victory that he's had. I mean, the plan weakens our military. It's destroyed thousands, tens of thousands of lives, and that have been disrupted. And we need to see this as a spiritual issue along with the other side, because that's where we need to be praying and see it for really what it is. So, but anyway, God bless you for your courage. And I'm sad that men like you had to get out of the military, because that makes our military even weaker. But I understand why you did, and you did the right thing. But God bless you, sir.
Well, thank you, Norm. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to respond to that, because I think you brought up some great points. So I wanted to say that, I certainly feel like I'm still fighting for the military, even though I don't necessarily wear the uniform. But he brought up some great points about the importance of the military that I think go with what I was saying earlier about how it's not just our military prowess. It's also that virtue, those values, the cultural ethos that the military should represent. For one of the things that I've noticed over just the last couple of years is that, we often talk about spiritual war or spiritual warfare. And I've talked about that for a long time too. The mistake that I think I made for many years, and I just realized this just in the last year or two, I think that many people, and I think I used to do this, speak about spiritual war or spiritual warfare metaphorically. And I think that's wrong. It's not a metaphor. I mean, it's real. In fact, it is the real war. And I think even myself, I used to I would use those terms kind of as a metaphor. It's not a metaphor. It's not a metaphor. The spiritual war is the war. In fact, other forms of war kind of fall out from the spiritual war. That is the core war. So just as Norm there was sharing those thoughts, it just kind of reminded me of that, just kind of in my own spiritual maturation, some of those thoughts that I've come to over time.
And, tackling swimming upstream is what most of the folks that listen, all the folks that listen to this program do. It strengthens you so much. You have no idea. It tells you a lot about yourself, but it also tells you an awful lot about your Creator. And without engaging in those battles, with just, submitting and going, okay, well, there's not a whole lot I can do. That's just the way things are. You don't really learn a whole lot. But folks like yourself and Major Tom and the other folks that listen to this program, they've been in the battle, and they're swimming upstream. And
sure.
and bully for them, bully for you. The purpose of this program this morning, I wanted to bring you to the attention of our audience and to the general public, whoever wants to send this interview out. I want to tease them about you, and I want them to let them know that there's somebody like you out there at the level you were at, and did the right thing, took a chance, did the right thing. But I think now you're in a position where you can actually have more leverage than you did when you're in the service. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. And one of the reasons as to why I did not falter in deciding to take out the uniform, because I felt, I think I can perhaps do more in this fight out of uniform than I can in uniform. And to some degree, I think I have done that, and I continue to do that. So yeah, I would agree with you.
I think Major Tom may have a word or two. And
I agree with you completely, Brad. I feel the same way. I've been able to do more out of uniform with the surveys that I've done than I was ever able to do in uniform, even though I enjoyed my career with the F-16, F-22, and F-117 stealth fighters. Love those jobs. But in fact, in about 2 weeks, I'll be going to CPAC at the Gaylord Convention Center in National Harbor, Maryland, where all the conservatives meet. I'm going to be taking these clots with me. These clots with me. I also have a T-shirt that says, "Trump, please renounce the jabs. Not 100 million saved, but 17 million killed." Is on my T-shirt, and I'm going to show these shots and that T-shirt all over CPAC, just like I did last year, and put it in these people's face, because these are our conservative allies. They're supposed to be on our side. I want to remind them that there are people like you out there that are not being made whole by this, and that not just the people that were fired and kicked out of the Air Force, but those, like you said, that resigned, voluntarily because they knew this was wrong. They need to be made whole as well. So I'll be carrying the torch for your people, Brad, when I go to CPAC in a couple of weeks. We got to keep doing this. We got to force good men to do the right thing. We got to keep the pressure on until good men do the right thing.
Yeah, well said.
If you're going to clean up America, you need some agitators. Just stir the mix, okay?
That's true.
To get all the dirt out of the clothes, if you will.
Yeah, you and I kind of, when we spoke on the phone yesterday, kind of the same thing. How badly do Americans want their freedom?
Amen. Yeah, and it's well, I know in my life, Brad, it's and I don't want this to happen to anybody else. It took a lot of pain to get me to where I am today, and but I'm glad I'm where I am today, and I can look back on the pain and go, okay, I see where that was helpful in my life. Mm-hmm. And I'm very grateful that I could do that, and that I experienced all those bad things. We've got about two or 3 minutes left. There's probably a question you wanted to be asked today that I didn't ask. So go ahead and ask yourself that question and then answer it. Or
yeah. If I've never heard about the concept of moral injury before, where can I learn more about it? Okay, great question. So if people, and there's such a tight relationship between moral injury and kind of, that spiritual component too. So if people want to go find some stuff that I have written before, I have written extensively about moral injury. There's a piece that I have called Moral Injury at my Substack, which people can find at my name, bradmiller10.substack.com. So I would just encourage people to go there and find the piece that I wrote on moral injury. It's been the most popular piece that I've ever written on Substack, and just understand that that's written with a perspective towards the military, but that concept of moral injury applies across the board. And I would say right now that we are a morally injured nation.
Really? How dare you?
Yeah, I know. I know, shocking, but yeah.
And we could get into discussion about the church at this point, but we don't have the time. But I've got a history with the church, Brad. I've stood out in front of churches and quote unquote protested, trying to get them to get their congregation to be salt and light in the world. But we are, to me, what I'm looking at is an amoral and unjust nation. Mm-hmm. And what we're seeing are the results of that. And that's what we need. That's how we need to clean it up. Military is going to be a very important part of it. Norm brought up a point that I hadn't even thought about before. That is very, very important. Brad, I appreciate your time, and I hope folks will spread the news about you, and that we can get more exposure to you, because you need to be leading this charge, or helping to lead the charge, with regards to the COVID injuries, physical injuries, the mental injuries, the occupational injuries, the family injuries. I mean, it just goes throughout the division that has happened in this nation just because of COVID. And then you have J6, and there's probably going to be something else coming down the road. Folks, where there's unity, the Lord commands a blessing. Where there's unity, the Lord commands a blessing. You know what to do, and you know when to do it. So get out there and do it, folks. Brad, thank you very much. God bless you. Godspeed. And we'll be talking to you soon, brother.
All right. Thanks so much. I appreciate it. God bless.
Our pleasure. Our pleasure.
keeping you informed. This is Last Call with BJ Edwards.
And welcome back. Second hour, last call. Mr. Anderson, you need to get some rest. I'm not too off. What was that all about? Are we talking AI here or what? I can't hear you, sir. Unmute yourself.
It's a 2-minute warning. You know, there are things to. There are a lot of things to talk about out there, you know, and I don't know where China is and what they're doing, but building all these robots makes you wonder and think about, AI, what's going on?
Yeah.
And I'm looking into what Elon's doing with robots. He's talking about building a million of them by, 2027 or something like that?
He's a very intelligent man. Now, I distinguish between intelligence and wisdom. Okay.
There's a big difference.
There's a huge difference.
There's
I don't consider myself very intelligent, but I get my wisdom from spiritual nudges, hunches, if you will, which, by the way, leads me into the second hour in terms of a article I saw. This is J6 related, folks, but it's human related as well. The amount of conditioning that we're undergoing is absolutely phenomenal. It really is. The attack on righteousness, the attack on wisdom, the promotion of intelligence and convenience. And when you dare to stand up to the powers to be, there's a price to be paid. I've found that out personally, and I think most of the folks that listen to this program have found that out. And keep learning, folks. You cannot stop. You really can't. If the enemy wants you to lay down or hide under the bed or hide in a closet, they don't want you exposing yourself. Now, don't do that. Exposing yourself to the public with righteousness. They just don't want that. And I think about some of the heroes, the J6 heroes that I've gotten to know, that I've gotten to talk to. We've been blessed. We really have, in terms of the folks we've been able to talk to.
They are incredible.
Yeah.
And the faith that they matured in. They matured in their faith. And they share that, and they're going to. We need more warriors. We were talking about military, and seeing God building His army out of these opportunities. People suffer, and sometimes we don't look at that side of our faith. If we're going to put it out there, and we have some knowledge that we might suffer for the cause, and you endure it with the joy of looking ahead, with the joy that the Lord has promised us. It's not about this world, but it's about being with the Lord and being on the right side.
Yep.
And being embraced by Him, that we will go through some hard times, but in the end, well, they say we're victorious, right?
Yep. JC, what do you think about standing up, swimming upstream? Huh? What do you think?
I'm too scared. I might drown. I might drown, JR.
Well, yeah, and you might lose your business.
Hey, you know how I was up last 7 Saturdays, 7 or 8. I've been up there with this one.
Local high pastors. Yeah.
So now that the pastor's out of prison, I'm telling the Democrats standing with me. I said, listen, that preacher man got out of prison. He's going to be coming to the square to bring a message to you. And they stand there and they don't know what to say to me. So last week, I took the backside of one of the signs and I put on there, thank you, President Trump, J6ers pardoned. So this week, I got me another one. I did because I got the backside of 4 of these signs. Because believe it or not, I'm the only one holding one of them signs about the pastor going to prison. Nobody's come held one with me. I made up 4 of them, thinking, oh, I'll have 3 other people hold them. Not a person has laid hands on them signs. So this week, here's my new sign this week.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah.
How dare you? How dare you?
I'm standing with the Democrats with their stupid signs, and then I'm going to have that. And I'm taking my van up. It's got the 3 new Trump flags on it. I've got them hanging, put eyelets in them. Like the front one says, Jesus is my savior, Trump is my president. Then I got 45, 47. And the other one says God, guns, and Trump or something. I think, but I got the 3 new flags. I'll park it up right where the liberals stand, and I'll get out there with my sign and hang out with them for the day. And I get to share with them. I tell Joan, I said, Joan, the evolutionary professor, because it's funny, I give her little stuff like, hey, every knee will bow and every tongue will confess. And I said, Joan, I hope you find Jesus before that day comes, that judgment day. I'm praying that you find Jesus. I'll just keep telling her. She stands there for the whole half hour they're there. She went out and say one word. Not one. First time in my life I've ever had a liberal Democrat stand there and not run their mouth. But you can just talk the whole time to her. She says nothing. So she's got to listen to me, even though she hates me.
A lot of these folks have been anesthetized, brother. I mean, I hear you. And you never know. You never know when it hits. You never should stop trying. First of all, it's a good exercise for you personally, because you're going to learn a few things. That didn't work. This didn't work. But you don't know until you call play. And I love what JC does, because he's out there in the game, and he's active. And every now and then you find a little nugget.
A couple of weeks ago, I had a boy come up because I was there. Looked like he's about 19, 20. And he was over there talking to Joan. And I'm trying to listen. I'm leaning over a little bit, trying to listen, because she was talking to him. She won't say a word to me for the 9 years we've been on that square. She's been up here every Saturday for 9 years. So she's talking to this boy and saying something about, they're talking about abortion and this and that and stupid stuff. I could hear a few words every once in a while. So after I heard something, and then I went over to him and I said, hey, I started in 70 million babies killed and blah, blah, blah. Hear this. I thought this kid was a Kenyan student and she was brainwashing him. And I thought he was coming up to be nice to her. He was a 19-year-old Christian kid from a local church here. And he was giving it to her just with statistics about Christianity and God and demonic stuff. And it was great. So him and I hit it off after she left. He stood around and talked to me for a while, but I was shocked. I thought it was going to be some college student from Kenyon that was under her authority. It wasn't. He just got out on his own and walked up and approached her with what he believed. I was like, good for you, young man.
Folks, it doesn't come in bundles. I complain to the Lord all the time. Look, I've been at this for 38 years. And as hard as I worked, I had to be the vice president of the United States. At least that. But that's not what this is about. This is about me, yes, but it's about my learning. It's about my exercising. We were talking to 5 incredible young men and women last week. And if you did not see that program last week, please listen to those witnesses that were in Washington, D.C., but witnesses for Christ.
Amen.
Their faith was tested, and it just exponentially expanded. I mean, they put themselves in a position where something bad could happen, and something bad did happen, but it's what they did that is so commendable. And Robert Morse, the first show we did of the year, his testimony as well. Look at in prison, they went through. Well, our guest next week is Bill Dunphy, Pastor Bill Dunphy. And Pastor Bill Dunphy was put in a American gulag, and gulags are nasty. Again, if you listen to Ryan from last week, Ryan Zink, and he was talking about the food that he had to put in his sock and run water through it because of the blue tint and the way the chemicals that they put in there. and the screaming and the drugs and the threatening and the way they treat you and the solitary confinement. You shouldn't treat human beings that way, folks. And all these folks did was show up in Washington, D.C. on January 6th to redress their grievances. And they were prompted, they were prodded, they were shot at, they were gassed, they were pushed, cajoled.
And invited.
Yes, and they were invited by the president. Same president.
They were invited to cross the line, and then punished for it.
Yeah, true. All in good faith. Should you not go to Washington, D.C., which, by the way, is a separate country? We're finding that out rather quickly. Very much a separate country. They don't have to abide by the Constitution and our rules. They make them as they go. If just look at the contrast between Joe Biden or whoever is running that presidency and Donald Trump. Now, Donald Trump is presenting great ideas and great executive orders, although I don't like the idea of getting attached to executive orders, because that sets a precedent for the next president that comes in. The next president could come in, could wipe out everything that Donald Trump did in 4 years. Bingo, just like that. So we have to fill in the gap, folks. This is the outline. We have to fill in the words. And that means you're going to have to do. And it's not going to be easy, because you're going to get a lot of resistance, and you're going to get a lot of resistance because you deserve it. You deserve it because you didn't do anything. You're afraid of what your son or daughter might think of you, or your mom and dad might think of you, or your neighbors might think of you, or a liberal newscaster might think of you, or you might lose your job. Your boss might think of you. You're afraid to do that. Not to do is to do, folks. Not to say is to say. So if you don't say anything, you are, by abstentia, agreeing with what is happening, what has happened in the United States. Now, we have an opportunity where the president at least appears to be, and is offering a blueprint for us. And again, all we need to do is fill in the blanks there, folks. Fill in the blanks. I want to get to a story, and we'll probably take a break before I can read the article, about a man who was in Washington, D.C. on January 6th, suffered because of it. Let's just say this gentleman, I don't know all the research on this, but I'm guessing he was in one of the gulags and went through the hell that you had to go through there in that gulag. The nasty food. And you can just imagine what some of the preparers might do to that food, especially, here we go again, if you're white. Okay? And Pastor Duffy's going to maybe get in a little bit of that when we interview him next week. But it's a totally different world in there. And if you're Christian and you're white, you could be in trouble. Well, you're destined to be in trouble. And they're going to treat you miserably. And you're going to do anything you can to get out of there as soon as you possibly can. Shouldn't be there in the first place, but you're going to do that to get out. Let's take a break, Mr. Anderson. I'm going to get into the article about an Indiana gentleman, Jay Sixer, and what happened to him at a traffic stop.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Kennedy, I only have 5 minutes with you, and I've got a lot of experience with CMS, so you're just going to have to listen. Two things. One, if you want to move from advocacy to public responsibility, Americans are going to need to hear a clear and trustworthy recantation of what you have said on vaccinations, including a promise from you never to say vaccines aren't medically safe when they in fact are, and making indisputably clear that you support mandatory vaccinations against diseases where that will keep people safe. You're in that hole pretty deep, and frankly, you frighten people.
I'm sorry, folks. Progressive Democrats are dividers. They're haters. I watched some of it, couldn't watch all of it. It was just insane to even try to do that. One thing I would mention for Mr. Kennedy is to turn his mic off. You can hear him breathing and grunting, and sounds like me this morning. Yeah. Like a puppy dog. Indiana man Matthew Huddle, pardoned by Trump for role in January 6th riot, is shot and killed by cops. I'll ask that question after I read this. Article by Melissa Koenig. An Indiana man who was just recently pardoned by President Trump for his role in January 6 Capitol riots was shot and killed by a police officer during a traffic stop on Sunday last week. Matthew Huddle, 42, was fatally shot by a deputy with the Jasper County Sheriff's Department at around 4:15 p.m. on State Road 14. Fox 59 reports Indiana State Police said the traffic stop led the unidentified deputy to try to arrest Huddle, but he allegedly resisted and struggled with the officer. Now, remember what I said before. The hell that these J6ers went through in the American gulags. And I'm going to ask yourself a question. Do you think he panicked? Do you think that ending of his life was justified? Indiana State Police said the traffic stop led the unidentified deputy to try to arrest Huddle, but he allegedly resisted and struggled with the officer. That altercation led the deputy to fire his gun, killing Huddle. It remains unclear why the deputy stopped Huddle near the Jasper and Pulaski County lines. Maybe he did a search on the plate and it came up terrorist, insurrectionist, huh? Maybe? Or likely? Officers only noted that he was in possession of a firearm. Oh, an American in possession of a firearm. Yeah, that's pretty bad. But did not say whether Huddle had yielded the weapon. We have a terrorist and we see a gun in the car. Uh-oh. We have a gentleman that's probably likely been in the gulag and is never going to go back there again. Uh-oh. Dale Huddle and his uncle were previously arrested for taking part in January 6 U.S. Capitol riots. The FBI said the 42-year-old was inside the Capitol for roughly 10 minutes, sin of sins. He was ultimately arrested in Boise, Idaho in November 22 after he was identified in a video inside the Capitol going into multiple offices, the crypt area and hallways, according to USA Today. Huddle eventually pleaded guilty to entering a restricted building. As his attorney argued, he was just at the Capitol to provide his uncle with a ride. He is not a true believer in any political sense, defense attorney Andrew Hemmer wrote in a court filing at the time. He instead went to the rally because it would be a historic moment, and he had nothing better to do after getting out of jail for a previous driving offense. His uncle talked to him about politics and stolen elections, but Matt mostly turned out as he did and really didn't care. Hemmer went on to note that his client had started drinking as a teenager, and for nearly 15 years, Huddle drank 12 to 18 beers almost every day. Court documents obtained by the New York Times say. Why do we need to know that he used to drink 12 to 18 beers almost every day? Why do we need to know that? Wait a minute. I'm going to put two and two together here. He was probably picked up for potentially drunk driving? Or was he picked up for potentially being a patriot on January 6th, an insurrectionist? Or was he, Norm, come on in, brother.
Well, yeah, I've given this situation quite a bit of thought. I think this fellow was angry.
Well, among other things, yeah. Okay.
Know that, and again, I want to take the spiritual side of this. I've been blessed. Of course, we know Maga Mouse, and she sent newsletters out to the J6ers now for several months, and I've had the opportunity to write poems for them. And the third one that I did was our J6 Heroes and Leaders Forgive. And I went through the forgiveness process because obviously, I mean, if anything makes you angry, it's the way they've been treated. And we're all angry about it sitting out here, and we didn't even go through it. And so I suspect this fellow was very angry because he had not forgiven. And I want to talk about forgiveness for a minute, and not just for them, but for anyone. We are powerless to reach within ourselves, within our hearts, and to pull out the hurt that is within us. Only God can do that. But God cannot do that until we make the choice to forgive. And when we talk about anger, see, anger is an emotion God has given us to tell us that we need to stop and examine, why am I angry? You know, if I get angry because I don't get the biggest piece of pie, that's selfishness. I need to confess that and move on. I may get angry because I just learned that my neighbor is beating his wife and kids. So I need to stop and examine that and examine what action do I need to take. We have an example of that in the book of Nehemiah when he came back after the wall had been built. Things were in a mess. And he said, I pondered it in my mind. In other words, he stopped and thought through the situation. And then he accused the nobles and the officials. So when we're angry, we need to stop and say, why am I angry? And we need to stop and deal with it. And again, if it's sometimes it's legitimate, sometimes it's not, but it's a God-given emotion to tell us that we need to deal with things. So we just put this forgiveness video on Rumble yesterday, actually, and then the second one that I wrote was Finish Strong. And these folks are going to have to deal with that. And I just see this as, this fellow was very angry, and he was stopped by the police, and he's saying, I'm not going back there again. And I think that led him to his death. And that's sad to see, and I think we may see more of it if some of these folks do not choose to deal with their anger and their bitterness. And again, we need to view forgiveness not as an issue between us and the person that has wronged us. We need to see it as an issue between us and God. God is the one that commands us to forgive. And if we can see it as being obedient to God, and again, only God can remove or hurt. But again, God's hands are tied until we make the choice to forgive. And in that one poem, I go through the process because forgiveness is a process. And it's also, as I've said many times, forgiveness is the easy part. The hard part is then walking in the forgiveness on a daily basis. So I would encourage people, I don't usually do this, but go to a Rumble site under Uncle Wisdom and look for those poems, J6 Leaders, Heroes and Leaders Forgive, and look at that. So that's my thoughts about that situation.
And hang in there with me, Norm. I appreciate what you're saying. Interesting insight. And I can't remember the quote directly, but it's something about forgiveness is a bridge that if you don't build, can close a path for you in the future.
Sure.
And it's I'm not saying that you have to forgive right away. Okay. I mean, it may take a little while. I'm not a counselor like Norm is, but I imagine that maybe thinking about the forgiveness is a good start. Or, I'm probably going to have to forgive this. I don't see how possibly I can do this, but I am going to have to forgive this. And geez. And then once you do that, you'll be fascinated. I'm not a avid practitioner of forgiveness. Okay. Don't get me wrong. But when you do it, you're going to find again, this is about you and your growth. Forgiveness is about you and your growth. It is an opportunity, like pain is an opportunity to take you from step 1 to step 2, and then step 3 to step 4 in terms of your growth. And to look back on what happened to you with that individual or what happened to you in your life and go, okay, I'm grateful for that, because had it not been for that, then this would not have happened, or I never would have thought doing something like that. That make any sense to you?
Well, absolutely. And again, we've got to see it as between us and God, which can help us to go ahead and make that choice. And we've got to leave our feelings out of it, because again, only God can begin to heal those. But there's something about anger that I'd love to share with you if we've got time.
Yeah.
Anger never goes away until it's dealt with. And I want to give you an example. Now my dad was a good dad. He was a Baptist preacher, well thought of. But my dad's dad died when my dad was only 9, and this was back in the late 20s. My dad had to go to work at 9 years old. It was just him and his mom. And the only job he could find was with some neighbors, and they were loggers. Now, they didn't have the big front end loaders back then. 4 people they had 2 men on each end of that log, and they had these hooks to pick them up. Now, he's 9 years old. Now, he was a stout 9-year-old, but he was expected to do a man's job. And they really mistreated him in the way they talked to him and the way they treated him. Now, he's 9 years old. When my dad was, I think, about 72, we're having a family get together. We're cooking hamburgers and hot dogs, and we're having a good time. We're outside over my brother's house. And it was my dad and myself and 2 or 3 others, and Dad's telling some old stories about growing up. And most of them was, funny stories and things. And he gets on this one, and he talks about that situation about him having to go to work at 9 years old. And as my dad got into that story, again, it happened at 9, he's 72, his lip began to quiver. That's what happened when my dad was angry. His lip would quiver. And I never will forget it, BJ. God spoke to me as clear as I'm talking to you. And he said, anger never goes away until it's dealt with. And we can hide it. We can cover it up. There's a lot of symptoms of anger. A lot of people laugh a lot. They smile a lot. I had a young man he was in his 20s. And just about every time I'd ask him a question, he'd laugh. And I knew a little about his background. He was really hurt. But again, that anger never leaves us till we stop and deal with it. And it can affect us forever if we don't stop and make the choice to forgive.
Yeah, it can be a burden. It can be a burden that you invite in and keep in and feed on a regular basis. Right. And you have to feed it, by the way, folks. You have to feed it on a regular basis.
Right.
You got to keep reminding yourself that's one of the things that I hate about the discrimination and what that industry has done to a certain sect of people in America. It has told them that they need to have help from somebody else because somebody else is causing them problems. And you need to be angry at those folks. And you need to be bitter about it, but those other folks will take care of you. And they're using your anger and your bitterness to hurt you, to create a dependency on you, to take your liberties away from you folks. You're enslaving yourself. Especially if you're in America. Go ahead.
Yeah, you leave those people in control of your life.
Yeah.
Somebody once said unforgiveness is like drinking poison and hoping somebody else is going to die.
I like that. Let's take a break, Mr. Anderson. I want to get back to hard times create strong men, which is kind of leading into this. BJ Edwards along with Mr. Anderson. This has been your last call. This is your last call.
keeping you informed. This is Last Call with BJ Edwards.
Kind of along the themes of let the sunshine in, folks. As individuals and as a nation, think about this. Hard times create strong men create good times create weak men create hard times. Can you see the cyclical aspect of this? I don't know how you go from point A, strong men, and keep that, because there's a tendency. I think about the J6ers and about all they've been through and about how strong their faith is right now because of the force, because of that refining force. And then once they get out and they get those liberties and freedoms back, come on, you can't be running 100 mile per hour 24/7. You got to relax a little bit, right? And maybe today I don't want to do those push-ups, or I don't want to do those setups. And then, okay, well, maybe I'll eat a little, I'll have an extra donut, or I won't walk today. And then, nothing happened. I didn't really hurt myself. I'm still looking pretty good. And then over a period of time, you start losing those ripples and those muscles. And then you become weak men. And because of your weakness, society, your family, suffer, and hard times are created. I know that's a cycle, and I know how easy it is to get in and out of that. I don't have the answer for that, okay? I think about Donald Trump, the new Washington, D.C. sheriff, and what he's doing, the opportunities that he's presenting for America, the promises he made and kept. We talked about the J6ers. Mothers, fathers, sons, daughters were caught up in a deep state collusion intended to discredit a president and send a message to the rest of America. The message being, we're in control, and if you dare try to change it, there'll be hell to pay. And there was, and there is. And so when it comes to those J6 Patriots, and the result of the deep state's diabolical plan, one of the main disasters was not the physical damage done to Capitol, but the spiritual and emotional damage done to American families up and down the line to this day. We had Robert Morse on, and he talked about his situation prior to January 6th. Had a girlfriend. He and his dad had traveled around the United States. He went to Pennsylvania University, Penn State, got his degree in education, master's degree, and was teaching, his first year of teaching. But he went to Washington, D.C. on January 6th. And as a result of that, he was arrested. And prior to that, his relationship with his girlfriend, his mother, father, relatives, he was okay. No real big problems with Robert. After January 6th, that all changed. Like with COVID. Look what happened with COVID. Look at the division. I remember talking to a lady at one of the meetings I was at, and she was really, really distraught, upset, because she couldn't see her grandson without taking a shot and wearing a mask. Think about that. Think about that. The division that's still there. Even though we're finding that the J6, I'm talking not the January 6th, but the COVID issue was really not what we were told it was. It wasn't the threat. The only threat was the vaccination. But the real threat was what it did to the families, what it did to the vocations, what it did to the communities, what it's still doing. The residue from that is still there. How do you fix that? First of all, you have to look to that it is an issue. Family breakup has just been incredible. And J6 did the same thing. So our friend Robert, as a result of his efforts in January 6th, was put in prison. Girlfriend's gone. Mom and dad divorced. So you know there's two separate issues there with mom and dad relating around Robert. Lost his job, of course. Brothers disowned him. Hard times create strong men. Strong men create good times. Good times create weak men. Weak men create hard times. We need to remember that lesson, folks. When we get out of this, and I believe we will get out of this, I don't know exactly how it's going to be, but we will get out of that. This is the J6ers that we talked with. And this isn't just for J6ers. This is for folks that maybe went through the COVID era. I spoke to the lady I talked to you about that couldn't see her grandson. She stood up and did the right thing. She was able to see her grandson. And rebels in telling me about how wonderful it is. And yeah, I advised her that she's going to have to do what she thinks is right. And if she's doesn't want to take the shot, don't take the shot. You're that child's grandmother. That's got to mean something to your son and daughter-in-law. The results aren't always immediate, folks. But yin and yang, folks. For every action, there's a corresponding reaction. I don't understand the delays, but that's up to our Creator, okay? I can see where the delays in my life were helpful. Still working out some of the other delays that I don't understand. Again, been at this for 38 years, and I'm not Vice President of the United States. Come on, give me a break. I'm not smart enough to be there in the first place, but anyway. We just have to understand that there are refining fires out there. And when I think about this gentleman in Indiana, I don't understand why that happened the way it happened. So we have to talk about this nation's future. We talk about individuals and about their refining fire. The second coming is going to be a little late. Okay. I mean, there's nothing we can do after that. And I don't know. Are we working against God, Jesus Christ, by trying to make things right? I don't think so. I think we need to stop being reluctant and become a doer. Don't know what to do? Well, if you see a need, then that's the area that you need to approach. And don't hesitate. The family is so critical in everything that we're doing. And I appreciate what Brad Miller said about the military and Norm. But if we fix the military, we fix the J6 situation. We fix all the problems that you're working on. Abortion, the LGBT transgender issue. There's so many issues out there. The family issue, obviously, what we're going to talk about. But if you don't have the family, which is the foundation of all society, if you don't have that, you don't have it in order. You don't have the structure there that you need. If it is truly the foundation, it is the first institution that God created for the benefit of man, and it wasn't by accident. He knew what he was doing. You've got brothers and sisters in Christ. What would that mean to you? You have a Father in heaven. Mr. Anderson, go ahead, please.
Well, on the issue of the family, that's probably one of the largest challenges we have right now. You name several as we're talking about those things, but I know very few families that are what we would call intact.
Yeah.
Fit that natural idea that we promote. And I think in these times, especially while we have I don't know what you would call it, it's kind of the calm before the storm, because I'm still looking for the storm, even though I've adopted this BJ philosophy: behind every rainbow there's a cloud.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
Don't do that.
I'm changing.
I got to deal with reality, that there's an enemy out there, and we can't forget that. And that enemy does disguise himself in many forms that seem maybe okay. And we need to be on guard for that. And that's brings up the family. We got to prepare our families. We got to make sure that they know. It's hard to get that message across to our families. And a lot of us, our families are scattered all over the country, let alone just within the state or even 5 miles away, and keeping communication open. Where we have a lot of differing ideas out there right now, politically speaking, maybe church-wise, whatever kinds of things. These discussions, the need, you talk about if you see a need, well, hear your calling first, and what you're called to. Be diligent in seeking how to fulfill that calling, and hope and pray that calling is coming from your Father in heaven, our Father in heaven, whose will be done in earth as it is in heaven. And so that's the thing to focus on, I think, in these times. Don't get these we're letting the sunshine in, but don't get blinded by the sun. Keep your eyes open on the sun. That's my advice.
Heck yeah! Heck yeah! Heck yeah!
Let the sun shine in, folks. Let the sun shine in. Let's take a break, Mr. Anderson, and I'm going to get back to this rainbow behind every cloud theory of BJ, or a cloud behind every rainbow theory. BJ Edwards along, Mr. Anderson. This is your last call.
By entering into the record a letter the committee received from Ambassador Carolyn Kennedy outlining what she believes is Mr. Kennedy's lack of personal fitness for the office.
Without objection.
Mr. Kennedy, you have spent years pushing conflicting stories about vaccines. You say one thing and then you say another. In your testimony today under oath, you denied that you were anti-vaccine. But during a podcast interview in July of 2023, you said, quote, no vaccine is safe and effective. In your testimony today, in order to prove you're not anti-vax, you note that all your kids are vaccinated. But in a podcast in 2020, you said, and I quote, you would do anything, pay anything to go back in time and not vaccinate your kids. Mr. Kennedy, all of these things cannot be true. So, are you lying to Congress today when you say you are pro-vaccine? Or did you lie on all those podcasts? We have all of this on tape, by the way.
Yeah, Senator, as you know, because it's been repeatedly debunked, that statement that I made on the Lex Friedman podcast was a fragment of the statement. He asked me, and anybody who actually goes and looks at that podcast and will see this, he asked me, are there vaccines that are safe and effective? And I said to him, some of the live virus vaccines are. And I said, there are no vaccines that are safe and effective, and I was going to continue for every person. Every medicine has people who are sensitive to them, including vaccines.
Right. So
he interrupted me at that point. I've corrected it many times, including on national TV. You know about this, Senator Wyden. So bringing this up right now is dishonest.
Last Call with BJ Edwards. Real talk about real life.
This is so sad. I mean, it really is. This is not a hearing where they're trying to judge whether this individual is qualified or not, whether it be Mr. Kennedy or whether it be Pete Hegseth. It doesn't make any difference. This is political posturing. This is a circus, and it's feeding the fires of hate and envy and doubt. I don't know how you stop that. But this has gone on for so long. It is absolutely, positively disgusting. They have no intentions of voting for him. They have no intentions of finding out whether he's worth voting for. Any candidate. And I suggest this probably goes on about both parties. Or are we talking about the same party, Mr. Anderson? I don't know. Are there two parties or one? Just two different legs, maybe.
Two wings, same bird.
For sure. We have to key. The world builds itself around your aim. If you are bitter, or if you don't think you can, then you can't. If you think you can, you can. Now, is that immediate? Not necessarily. And do you alter maybe from your original intent? Yeah. Happens all the time. But don't be discouraged. I mean, I'm annoyed with what I'm hearing here, but I'm automatically thinking, okay, here's the BJ operation. I can't complain until I have a solution for something, or a potential solution for something. And I want you to take that same posture, because we're such a complaining nation. If you listen to the take it a Fox News or CNN or whatever, they want to feed your negativity. They want to feed that complaint bug that's inside of you.
I had a little theory about complaining, because I hear a lot of complaining about complaining and not doing.
Well, yeah, you do.
I do. And sometimes I think, well, at the very least, complaining does do some good, because it keeps the conversation open. And if you can't do anything else, at least talk about it. And that's one of the complaints I have, is that people are not talking about some of these issues. We have a lot of different sides to the thing. One of the problems with that, though, is, well, maybe you run into a conflict, or you got people that will just shut down and start calling you names and walk away instead of having an honest discussion about why you think what you think. What, we talk about censorship. Be careful we're not censoring each other. Keep that free speech going and keep it strong, because this is the heart of America. Let's complain if we got something to complain about, but not make it fruitless. Let's come up with, like you said, let's come up with solutions. So when I see an issue, like our guest earlier, he had a complaint and he did something about it. He knew he could do something.
Yeah.
But first you got to talk about it. Maybe your point of view isn't the right one, or it isn't going in the right direction. So get back. That's why I do these off the wall 2-minute warning kinds of things. Okay, let's look at that. Maybe
That's what I'm talking about.
Keep talking. So anyway, that's my theory on complaining. Sometimes that is doing something.
Yeah. And if it's part of the process, I'll put it this way. Yes, it's part of the process, probably a critical part of the process, but it is not the only.
Started.
It's not the only part of the process, and we've put such an emphasis on that, and it's become a drug that we've become addicted to. Complaining, and believe me, I grew up behind a rainbow. There was a cloud. I complained about everything and anything, and what I was trying to do. And you need to be careful with this, and I'll let you in here in a minute, Norm. You need self-fulfilling prophecy. You need to be very careful that you don't initiate that. Go ahead, Norm.
Well, talking about that, one of my favorite verses is in Philippians chapter 2, I think it's 14 and 15. Bible said, do all things without murmuring or disputing, that you may become children of light in the midst of a crooked and perverse generation, among whom you shine as lights. So we need to be a light more than we need to murmur and complain.
Heck yeah! Heck yeah! Heck yeah!
Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
That's what I'm talking about.
PJ's having fun.
I'm playing with the controls today. I'm trying to.
Man, I stayed home today. I shouldn't do that.
For sure. I love what we're doing here, Mr. Anderson, because the people that we're getting to meet, and I'll talk to the panel. Just those folks alone is worth it.
Amen.
But the like Bill, like the guest today, my goodness, who'd have thunk we would have been talking to that individual, or talking to anybody else that the J6ers. It's
Norm
just
Davis.
or Norm, yeah, or Tom, like I said, Brad Miller. It's just absolutely incredible. But what we do here is try to encourage you to get into the game. We want to be interviewing you. The folks that are listening to us, we want to be interviewing you. I know you're trying to do things now, and we want you to be successful. We pray that you're successful. But sometimes that success is you, what it's done to you and for you. It's gonna show you skills that you never knew you had. And it's gonna tell you more about a creator that you thought you knew, but you learned something about him just because of what you did. Don't hide, and don't complain. Don't just complain. Let me put it that way. Mr. Anderson's going to scold me if I say don't complain. So don't just complain. Don't make that your platform, because there's millions of other platforms out there that are doing the same thing. Put another platform up a little higher so you can do something about what you're complaining about. And yeah, do your research. Go ahead.
Well, I was schooled a little bit by Norm because, complaining, that is a negative thing. But, discussion, open up your mouth and tell what you know and be two things: teach and be teachable. Be ready to hear new information that you hadn't heard before and accept it. Don't dig in your heels on information that you may not have heard correctly or may have been taught wrongly, even for generations.
Yeah.
BJ, when I talked about the anger earlier, anger being an emotion God has given us to tell us we need to deal with something, just like as we're talking about the complaining, when we see things that are making us angry, we need to stop and say, why am I angry? And then see if there's some action I can take. As you talked about, we need to find a solution. Don't just be angry and sit on it, but examine it and see why and see what can I do to change it.
So I have to do something? You telling me I have to do something?
That's one of the complaints. If you find out something, then you have to do something.
Yeah, I don't want to find out what's wrong, because then I'm compelled to do something. To do good.
That's right.
Hey, listen, we're gonna book out of here. I appreciate Norm. I appreciate you. I appreciate JC. Martin, good to see you, brother. It's great to see you. And just everybody that has been part of this program. Keep up the good work. Keep working. And we'll talk next Saturday. Again, Pastor Bill Dunphy. Next Saturday here, lastcallradio.live, where you can see the difference.
Powerful testimony.
Look forward to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, JC, real quick, then we got to get out of here. Go ahead.
I just want to share what Norm shared with us. Going through that with Pastor Bill before they took him to the gulag, probably June and July, he's sitting here in my office, and I was angry. Oh man, I was so stinking angry. All the lies they told about him, and I was there for 4 hours. The attorneys never talked to me. I was angry. It was just, one day I was sitting here a couple of times. I told Pastor Bill sitting here, I said, listen, brother, I said, I will go and I will testify. I want to speak. I mean, I was just mad. And now I look back on it, and Norm, and the last week or two, it's been coming to me, and then Norm just finalized it. I was so stinking angry. I told Pastor Bill, I'll go to prison with you. Now, after listening to Pastor Bill on Coach's show and listening to him, I got thinking about this here a few days ago, and I thought, you know what? And Pastor Bill kept telling me, JC, it'll be all right, brother. And he always says, JC, are you listening to me? He would say that to me. And I think he knew, because now I've come to the conclusion, I think God spared me from going to prison with my anger. Because I said the other day, and this just woke me up. I thought, you know what? I might not have been able to handle that. That's one thing, listen to the square or go to the school board meetings and run my mouth, but to go to DC and then run my mouth there and get angry and then be in that prison cell with that evil that, like he said, you're at the door of hell. I might not have been able to handle that.
Amen. We got to run, brother. We got to run.
Right. See ya. Thanks, Norm.
You bet. God bless you.
Out of here, Mr. Anderson.
Join us next week for Last Call with BJ Edwards.